Alright, so I figured I might as well get back on her. I recorded an intro video a little while ago, but I definitely want to be able to, yeah, just keep at it and maybe do a little bit of Apex Arenas after this. But yeah, I was just spent the last half hour listening to more Sam Harris on free will, and it's pretty far removed from like the capitalist or materialist aspects of tech sector market and cryptocurrency market development. And I just think ultimately it does have direct relation to anything, because at its technical utmost, at the technical utmost of considerations, the fundamental aspects of a reality are what govern everything that transpires in our existence. So Sam Harris, I tend to agree with him on his fundamental like ontological assertions. I always tend to agree with his argument. However, I would add a lot of different specific additional considerations to what he's saying, or to phrase or parse things in a different way, through analogy or through some kind of metaphor, uh, allusion to, in order to try to understand things. So let's just listen in a little bit. I think there's a lot of stuff that they start talking about here that made me laugh. Like he starts talking about eating dog and how it's culturally contextual whether or not one would enjoy eating eating dogs.
Horrified to be served dog.
Um, one sec here. I gotta.
Uh, those are not norms that they are outside of us in some way, and they're felt very viscerally. I mean, they're certainly felt in their violation. You know, if you are, just imagine you're in somebody's home, you're eating something that tastes great to you, and you happen to be in Vietnam or wherever, you didn't realize dog was potentially on the menu.
It's funny because he always crosses that threshold of political correctness. As I think anyone who's pursuing integrity, you have to speak from the heart. You have to speak in a general sense, and to me, it's an indication that he's being honest. That he's basically censor, like he's crossing that threshold. And I just thought it was kind of funny to mention specifically. But another thing that came to mind just in reflection is that if I'm going to use the content of other YouTube channels like this, I think I'm giving them fair press. I think I'm giving them fair recognition, because I'm definitely acknowledging Sam Harris, and I'm definitely acknowledging the Lex Friedman uh, YouTube channel's contribution. So I'm not sure what people's opinion or what formal policy is with regard to referencing and directly using uh, the content of other channels is, but I guess I'll sort that out through copyright notifications and things of that nature. But I think I'm giving them fair press, and I'm just gonna add my thoughts in here and there.
And you find out that you've just eaten 10 bites of what is really a cocker spaniel, and you feel this instantaneous urge to vomit, right, based on an idea, right? Like, so like you're not the author of that norm, that gave you such a powerful experience of its violation. And I'm sure we can trace the moment in your history, vaguely, where it sort of got in. I mean, very early on as kids, you realize you're treating dogs as pets and not as food, or as potential food. Um, but yeah, no,
I think it's interesting that he mentioned the Southeast Asian source of such things. But I think there's an excellent argument on in advocacy of ultimately Sam Harris's position, which is that the system, the justice system, the governing forces of our society, most cultural values do automatically default to a prima facie, a popular opinion of what reality is. I think culture and society just automatically goes, well, it seems like we have free will and choice, so I'll just take it at face value. And basically everything that we do in our society and as human beings takes place within under that assumption. But it is an assumption, and anybody who thinks very deeply, meditates, really delves analytically into what we're confronting as humans with consciousness, I think you have to face the technical reality that if at any time we can verify that there is no choice for a human being, if at any moment in our entire experience of existing as conscious entities, we can experience a moment where we have to just surrender to the fact that there's no choice, we have no choice within the equation, then that should do away with choice altogether. If somebody can shoot another person, if somebody were to shoot me in the face or in the head with a gun, which science, a scientific perspective on reality, will attest to the fact that that's an open-ended possibility. It could happen in the entire scope and field of possibility. Somebody could end my life spontaneously in a direct way. What choice would I have, given the fact that even if you were to resurrect my body, resurrect my brain, put me back together, it would still not technically be my choice in order to be murdered or not, right? So whether or not ultimately you can put the pieces back together doesn't change the fact that the individual's choice is technically an illusion. I agree wholeheartedly. And Sam Harris always brings these mental models of spontaneous thoughts, just how your brain generates choice or generates internal cognition without any kind of deterministic, logical, or rational course or flow of thought process. But I think just something even more simplistic, that if there are multiple individuals, or there are multiple psyches and consciousnesses, and we're all constantly interacting in a way that is so fundamentally and inherently related, that it really does relate to the Buddhist concept of dependent origination. And I think that's where Sam derives a lot of his fundamental logic from, is the idea of dependent origination. And it just resonates very truthfully with me. And there's a lot of other philosophers, thinkers online and on YouTube that do agree with that. But at the same time, it's impossible for us to govern a society and prevent murder and chaos and have a functioning human world while acknowledging the innocence of all people. Like, essentially, I think the best reason in support of affirming this philosophical ontological assertion is that you really he says it later on in this, he mentions that you can't really hate people. Like, hate is illogical, even though it's human for us to feel emotions, negative emotions towards people who are inflicting suffering upon us. It doesn't actually stand up to the test of logic if everything is in fact without any choice, without any individually causal root, then it's emptiness, as one would describe in Buddhist philosophy. It's entirely empty.
No, but the point you just made opens us to, like, we are totally permeable to a sea of mind.
Yeah, but if we take the metaphor of the distributed computing systems, each individual node is is part of performing a much larger computation,
Hmm.
but it nevertheless is in charge of doing the scheduling of assuming it's Linux, is doing the scheduling of processes and is constantly alternating them. That node is making those uh, choices.
I guess like anybody who has any thoughts on this specific topic of conversation, please let me know. Let me know what you think about what they're talking about here, because I think it's a really interesting point. It's one of the pillars of philosophy that and deep thinking that will never go away. Like the question of free will is one of the most important questions that we can ask and deliberate on and discuss. So I don't want to steal any more from Lex, but I would say also what's come to mind is that in recent episodes, like in this, and there was another recent episode with Sinclair, David Sinclair, on Lex
The
on Lex's
following
channel. So this guy, David Sinclair, the life extension specialist, I
buyout.
listened to this one quite a bit, and obviously David Sinclair speaks from an incredibly physicalist and biologically oriented perspective on things, on choices, on the implications biologically of choices. I think it's again a really great guest and a really great topic. And David Sinclair is definitely an individual in his frame of reference and where he comes from. You can tell just by a lot of the analysis, the kind of analytical thoughts that he contributes to the conversation. So I highly recommend checking out this episode as well. This is an even more recent episode, but those are the two most recent episodes of this. And Lex has been coming out of his shell. Like in this episode, that's the one thing that came to mind, is that Lex seems to be contributing a lot more of his own thoughts, and there's parts where it breaks away and Lex kind of steers the conversation in a different direction. But I think that's interesting, and lately Lex has definitely been his own man, and he's starting to contribute a solid side to the conversation, which is interesting. And then also just looking, like I was made aware by a notification that the WWDC is number 4 on the trending list. So I just looked over the trending list and see what else is on here, what else is actually getting views on YouTube. Because I think ultimately, like if you're looking at the tech sector or cryptocurrency markets, like all of the surrounding cultural and market-oriented considerations are going to feed into it. Like everything's connected, right? It's all related. So the macrocosmic political climate and Apex Legends and the rest of it. Here's an interesting thing that I just wanted to take note of. Let me know what you think about this. If I'm on my desktop, I'd like everybody to consider this one little quandary. So I'm on my desktop. I've tried to create a folder here. So I've got Apex Legends running. I've got Origin running. So I'm just gonna close both Edge and my Origin. But it hasn't been allowing me to create a folder on my desktop. At the same time, I've been playing Apex Legends.